Give me that paper." The flight attendant ripped the drawing from 9-year-old Noah Brooks before his mother could stop her. Noah's hand stayed frozen in the air, still holding a broken blue crayon. "Please," he whispered. "It's for my dad." The attendant glanced at the crooked airplane, the smiling family, and the words written across the bottom. "I made it, Dad." Then she crushed the page in one fist and dropped it into the trash compartment of her cart. The cabin fell silent. Renee Brooks slowly stood beside her son, wearing a plain gray sweater and carrying no sign of wealth or influence. "Take it back out," she said calmly. The attendant, Marlene Voss, smiled without warmth. "Your child was creating a mess in a premium cabin. Sit down before I report you both." A businessman across the aisle lowered his laptop. An elderly woman whispered, "That boy wasn't bothering anyone." Noah stared at the trash cart, fighting tears. Renee placed one hand on his shoulder, but her eyes remained locked on Marlene. She had learned years ago that anger gave cruel people an excuse to ignore the truth. "You embarrassed a child over a drawing," she said. Marlene leaned closer. "And you are about to embarrass yourself even more." Someone behind them quietly raised a phone and began recording. "If you believe children deserve dignity wherever they travel, like this video and subscribe to EchoStory." Because what Marlene did not know was that the crumpled drawing would soon reach a man whose name could stop the entire airline. And when he saw it, everything changed. 40 minutes earlier, Noah had stood at the terminal window watching aircraft glide across the wet runway beneath a pale morning sky. He had not flown since a frightening turbulence incident 2 years before, and even now, every engine roar made his fingers tighten around Renee's hand. She wore faded jeans, flat shoes, and the silver bracelet Noah had made at school. Nothing about her suggested importance. She preferred it that way. Her late mother had once told her, "The safest kind of strength is the kind that doesn't need an audience," and Renee had carried those words through every difficult room she had entered. This flight mattered because Noah's father had missed his last birthday while handling an emergency overseas. He had promised to meet them at the destination gate, and Noah wanted to prove he had been brave enough to fly again. During boarding, he opened a sketchbook and began drawing a blue airplane, 3 stick figures, and a small gold star beside the cockpit. A retired teacher named Evelyn Hart noticed and smiled. "That's beautiful," she said. Noah lowered his voice. "My dad likes airplanes." Renee looked toward the front galley and noticed Marlene watching them. The attendant's gaze moved from Renee's simple clothes to their first-class boarding passes, then back to their faces. "Are you sure these are your seats?" Marlene asked when they reached row 4. Renee showed both passes, 4A and 4B. Marlene scanned them, frowned, and scanned again. "Interesting," she murmured before stepping aside. A younger attendant named Sophie glanced apologetically at Renee but said nothing. Noah settled by the window and began coloring. Renee opened a paperback, pretending not to notice Marlene's repeated looks from the galley. But beneath the cabin's soft lighting and polite music, judgment had already entered the aisle, and it was moving directly toward them. The first confrontation began with a crayon rolling 6 inches beneath Noah's seat. He immediately bent down to retrieve it, but Marlene appeared beside him before his fingers reached the floor. "Keep your things under control," she said sharply. Noah sat upright. "I'm sorry." Renee picked up the crayon and placed it back in the box. "It's handled." Marlene did not leave. Her eyes moved over the sketchbook, the crayons lined neatly on the tray, and Noah's nervous face. "This cabin is for passengers who expect a certain environment," she said. Renee looked around. No one nearby seemed disturbed. Evelyn Hart watched over the top of her glasses, her expression tightening. Across the aisle, college student Liam Carter had been filming the runway for a travel vlog. He lowered his phone but left the camera running. Near the galley, Sophie pretended to organize glasses while listening. She knew Marlene had received complaints before, yet senior crew always described them as misunderstandings. Renee kept her voice quiet. "He is drawing, not disturbing anyone." Marlene tilted her head. "You may think this is harmless, but parents often ignore behavior until it becomes everyone else's problem." Noah's shoulders folded inward. Renee placed her palm gently on the table. "Please speak to me. Not about my child as if he isn't sitting here. That calm correction embarrassed Marlene more than shouting would have. Her smile vanished. I'm responsible for this cabin, she replied, and I decide what becomes a problem. Whispers began behind them. Evelyn said clearly, "The child has been perfectly behaved." Marlene ignored her and reached toward the sketchbook. Renee moved it back slightly. For 1 second, their eyes met across the narrow space. Then Marlene said, "Tray tables must be cleared immediately," even though boarding was still underway. And as her hand closed around Noah's drawing, everyone nearby sensed the situation was about to become far worse. Noah held the drawing against his chest. "I just need 1 minute." Marlene's voice rose so the surrounding rows could hear. "You were instructed to clear the tray, and now you are refusing crew direction." Renee stood halfway, keeping her hands visible. "He is 9 years old. You can ask without frightening him." Marlene turned toward the passengers as if presenting evidence. "This is what happens when rules are treated as optional." Liam's phone captured every word. Evelyn leaned into the aisle. "That is not a safety issue. The aircraft door is still open." A few passengers nodded. Marlene's face flushed. She pointed to a tiny blue mark on Noah's napkin. "He has already damaged airline property." Renee looked at the clean seat, then at the disposable napkin. A crayon touched paper. The precision of the answer drew a quiet laugh from somewhere behind them. Marlene heard it. Her embarrassment hardened into cruelty. She snatched the page from Noah, crushed it, and threw it away. Noah's breath caught. Renee's body went still. The entire cabin seemed to shrink around the sound of paper folding. When Renee asked for it back, Marlene refused and accused her of interfering with cabin operations. "You are turning a simple rule into a confrontation," she said. Renee answered, "No, you turned a child's gift into trash." The businessman in row 3 finally spoke. "I saw the whole thing. She took it from him." Sophie stared down at the floor, guilt visible in the way she gripped the service tray. Marlene looked toward the galley and pressed the interphone. "I need the cabin supervisor and gate security in first class." Noah reached for his mother's hand. "Are we in trouble?" Renee squeezed his fingers. "No, sweetheart." But when 2 uniformed figures appeared at the aircraft door, even Renee knew the truth was no longer enough by itself. Cabin Supervisor Grant Wallace entered first, followed by an airport security officer whose presence instantly deepened the humiliation. Grant listened to Marlene before acknowledging Renee. The passenger refused repeated instructions, interfered with crew equipment, and encouraged her child to remain non-compliant, Marlene said. Noah looked at his mother in disbelief. Renee's voice remained level. "Ask the witnesses what happened." Grant gave a tired sigh. "Ma'am, we need you to lower the temperature here." Liam raised his phone slightly. She hasn't raised her voice once. Evelyn added, "The attendant took the boy's drawing without cause." More phones appeared above seat backs. Grant's jaw tightened as the cabin became harder to control. He turned to Renee. "The simplest solution may be for you and your son to leave the aircraft while we review the matter." Noah's eyes filled instantly. "But Dad is waiting." Marlene folded her arms, satisfied. Renee looked from Grant to the security officer. "Before we leave, will you put in writing that my son threatened no one, damaged nothing, and had a valid ticket?" Grant froze. "That is not how this works." Renee nodded slowly. "Then explain what specific action justifies removing him," Marlene interrupted. "Her refusal is the action." The security officer shifted uncomfortably. He had expected an aggressive passenger, not a mother speaking softly beside a crying child. Sophie stood behind Grant, pale and silent. She had watched everything, and Renee could see the truth struggling against fear in her face. Grant lowered his voice. "If you continue challenging crew authority, your travel may be canceled," Noah whispered. "Mom, we can go." "I don't want them mad." That sentence nearly broke Renee's control. She reached into her bag and removed her phone, but instead of calling, she placed it on the tray table. Then Marlene grabbed the trash liner and announced that cabin waste would be removed before departure, meaning Noah's drawing was seconds away from disappearing forever. No. Renee's voice was still quiet, but every person in first class heard it. She stepped into the aisle as Marlene lifted the trash liner from the cart. The security officer moved closer, and Noah began crying openly. "Please don't take it," he pleaded. "My dad has to see it." Marlene shook the bag once. The item was discarded. "This performance ends now." That was the line she should never have crossed. Evelyn stood from her seat despite her cane. "Give the child his picture." The businessman beside Liam rose too. She took it from him. "We all saw it," murmurs became voices. "Give it back. This is cruel. Why is security here?" Liam stopped hiding his recording and held the phone openly. Marlene looked around, stunned that the cabin was turning against her. Grant ordered everyone to sit down, but even he sounded uncertain. Renee felt years of discipline slipping. She pictured Noah as a toddler drawing airplanes beside his father's desk, waiting for a man who was always answering calls that affected distant airports and thousands of employees. She remembered promising that power would never make their family careless with people. Now her child was learning the opposite lesson from strangers. Renee inhaled slowly and chose dignity. "Open the bag," she told Grant. "Retrieve the drawing. Then we can discuss everything else," Marlene scoffed. "You don't give orders here." Renee unlocked her phone and opened a private contact marked only with a gold star. "I was hoping I wouldn't need to." Grant noticed the symbol beside the name and looked twice. Sophie saw it too, and her face changed. She recognized that emblem from internal executive messages. Before anyone could ask, Renee pressed call. A man answered on the first ring. "Renee, have you landed?" She looked at Noah's tears and said, "Daniel, something happened to your son." The cabin went silent, and what happened next changed everything. Renee did not place the call on speaker immediately. She explained in short sentences while Daniel listened without interrupting. Noah's drawing, the accusation, the trash bag, security, the threat of removal. As she spoke, Sophie looked toward the small gold star on Renee's screen again. It matched the symbol embossed inside the executive briefing folders used by North Star Aviation Holdings, the company that owned controlling interests in the airline. Her hands began trembling. Grant's tablet buzzed. He glanced down and saw an internal priority alert. "Hold Flight 271. Executive review initiated." He read it twice. Marlene noticed his face and whispered, "What?" Grant did not answer. The captain emerged from the cockpit, irritated by the delay. "Why are we still boarding?" Grant stepped close and showed him the alert. The captain's posture changed immediately. Renee ended the private explanation, then activated speaker. Daniel's voice came through controlled and low. "May I speak with the captain?" Marlene rolled her eyes. Another angry parent cannot interfere with departure. Sophie finally found her courage. "Marlene," she whispered, "stop talking." Marlene turned sharply. "Excuse me?" Sophie pointed toward Renee's phone. "That executive mark. I've seen it in corporate communications." Grant's device rang next. The caller ID showed the office of North Star's chief operating officer. Around the cabin, passengers exchanged confused looks. Liam kept filming, his camera moving from Renee to the nervous crew. Daniel asked again, "Is the captain present?" The captain stepped forward. "This is Captain Harris." A pause followed. "Captain," Daniel said, "before I identify myself, I need one answer. Is my 9-year-old son being threatened with removal because your lead attendant destroyed his drawing?" Captain Harris looked at Noah, at the phone's recording, and at Marlene clutching the trash bag. He did not answer quickly enough. Then Grant's call connected, and the voice on his tablet said, "Locate Renee and Noah Brooks immediately." The captain froze because he finally understood whose family was sitting in row 4. Daniel Brooks was the chief executive officer of North Star Aviation Holdings, the parent group that had acquired the airline 18 months earlier. His name appeared on corporate announcements, investor calls, and safety initiatives, but few frontline employees had ever seen his family. Renee had deliberately kept Noah away from cameras and executive events. She wanted him to be treated like a child, not like a symbol. Now complete silence filled the cabin as Daniel spoke through the phone. "My son should not need my position for a crew member to recognize his humanity." Marlene's grip loosened around the trash bag. Grant lowered his eyes. Captain Harris turned toward Sophie. "Tell me exactly what happened." Her voice shook, but she finally told the truth. Noah was quiet. He dropped one crayon. Marlene took the drawing after his mother asked her not to. She threw it away and described them as disruptive when they objected. Liam stood and offered his recording. Evelyn confirmed every detail. Other passengers raised their phones, each device holding another angle of the same humiliation. The captain faced Marlene. "Open the bag." This time she obeyed. Her hands moved slowly through napkins and empty cups until she found the crumpled page. One corner was stained, and the gold star Noah had drawn beside the cockpit was torn. Captain Harris unfolded it on the tray table. At the bottom, beneath "I made it, Dad," Noah had written, "Thank you for making planes safer." Daniel heard Renee read the words aloud. For the first time, his voice broke. Airport operations halted the flight. A senior executive was dispatched to the gate. Marlene was removed from duty pending investigation, and Grant was ordered to remain for witness review. Yet Renee did not smile. She looked only at her son. "This isn't about who your father is," she told the room. "It's about who he was before you knew." Then the airline's regional president boarded and announced consequences no one expected. Regional President. Monica Shaw walked directly to Noah and crouched beside his seat. She did not begin with contracts, titles, or corporate language. "Noah," she said, "what happened to your drawing was wrong, and what happened to you was wrong." He held the wrinkled page with both hands and asked, "Can it still be for my dad?" Monica swallowed. "Yes, and we are going to protect it." She provided a clear document sleeve and asked Sophie to help smooth the page. Then she turned toward Marlene, who stood near the galley without her name badge. Monica required her to apologize to Noah, not merely to Renee or Daniel. Marlene's voice was barely audible. "I'm sorry I took something important from you and treated you like you didn't belong." Noah looked at her for several seconds. "You could have just asked me to put it away." The simple answer cut through every excuse. Marlene was escorted from the aircraft and suspended pending termination review. Grant was removed from supervisory duties because he had accepted accusation over evidence. Sophie admitted publicly that she had seen the mistreatment but stayed silent out of fear. Renee did not attack her. "Courage is speaking before power arrives," she said. "Remember that next time." Monica announced mandatory retraining on child interactions, bias, and escalation, along with a new rule requiring supervisors to hear direct witnesses before removing a passenger. Daniel remained on speaker, but he refused special transportation for his family. "They will complete the journey in the seats they purchased," he said. "And every other passenger will be treated with the same dignity." Applause began quietly, then spread through the cabin. Noah did not celebrate. He simply slid the repaired drawing into its sleeve and pressed it against his chest. As departure resumed, Evelyn handed him a fresh blue crayon and whispered, "Finish the sky." Noah looked at the torn page, then began drawing again. When the aircraft landed, Daniel waited beyond the gate in a dark suit with his tie loosened, looking less like a CEO than a father who had spent the entire flight imagining his son's tears. Noah ran toward him holding the protected drawing. "It got ruined," he said. Daniel knelt, unfolded it carefully, and studied every crease, stain, and repaired tear. "No," he said softly. "Now it tells the whole story." Renee stood beside them while passengers passed, many pausing to offer quiet support. Liam promised to send his recording directly to the company rather than post Noah's face online. Evelyn hugged Renee and told her she had raised a courageous child. Sophie later sent a handwritten note explaining that the incident had changed how she understood silence. Within weeks, the airline introduced a program called Listen First, allowing junior employees to stop an escalation without fear of retaliation. Noah's drawing was framed in Daniel's office, not because it displayed artistic perfection, but because every crumpled line reminded him what leadership was supposed to protect. Marlene lost her position after the investigation confirmed earlier complaints that had been ignored. Grant was reassigned and required to complete extensive training before supervising passengers again. Renee asked for no public praise and no personal compensation. She requested only that the changes remain after the attention faded. EchoStory remembers moments like this because quiet dignity can expose loud cruelty, and real power is measured by who it protects when nobody important appears to be watching. Respect is not something you offer after discovering a title. It is what you show when you believe a person has none. Tell us in the comments what you would have done. Like this story, subscribe to EchoStory, and share it with someone who believes kindness should never depend on status.